gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
What is going on, CaneSport, and good morning to you all. And I would like to thank everyone for joining us on Good Morning CaneSport. Today, I'm joined by Stephen Wagner as we break down the news of the day, and there's plenty for this December 7th, Thursday morning. First off, we're going to start with the transfer portal that has been absolutely buzzing, and Miami is getting former NC State defensive tackle C.J. Clark on an official visit to Coral Gables down this weekend, which should be a huge one to kind of fill in those voids in that defensive line room. That we'll see a couple of departures this year. With the portal at an all-time high with players jumping in left and right, Steven, I want to ask you, if you had to pick one or two guys from this transfer portal to come to Miami, who would be kind of your wish list guys, the guys you want to see under the Christmas tree this Christmas?
Man, that's a really, really tough question because if we're being honest, I've kind of been a little bit underwhelmed by everyone who's gone into the transfer portal so far. I mean, obviously Cam Ward from Washington State, I think is kind of like the dream quarterback there. Will Howard from Kansas State, another really, really good guy. I wouldn't totally sleep on Kyle McCord. I don't hate Kyle McCord. I think that, there are a lot of Ohio State fans who are obviously really, really underwhelmed by his performance, but I feel like Kyle McCord is a guy who, you can't write any of these guys off right now. It's absolute madness. In terms of like longer term building, though, I think I'd really like to see Dante Moore at Miami. I would really, really like to see Miami go get Dante Moore. He was a little bit up and down as a freshman, but I felt like we still saw all of those positive or all of the positive upside that you want to see from a true freshman. I didn't think that, I didn't think that, his bad throws, his really head scratcher decisions, I didn't think that they were anything that, most true freshmen in the country don't make at some point. Obviously he was committed to Oregon at one point. So, we'll see what happens there. I personally want Dante Moore. That's just me. I personally want to see Dante Moore in a Miami uniform. Although obviously, Cam Ward, Will Howard, those wouldn't be names I don't think a lot of fans would hate to see either. Kyle McCord, yeah, he underwhelmed at Ohio State, but he's not bad. I think that, Ohio State fans specifically gave him kind of a lot of unnecessary flack for, maybe being a step, or well, I shouldn't say maybe, for definitely being a step down from Justin Fields and CJ Stroud. But man, you're talking about being a downgrade from back-to-back Heisman finalists. He wasn't horrible. He just wasn't that elite top 15 pick like the way that Justin Fields and the way that Justin Fields and CJ Stroud were.
Yeah, no, I have to agree with you on that, but I also have to agree with the Dante Moore one. When you kind of named the Cam Wards and the Will Howards and all those guys, I was like, hey, those are good, kind of quick solutions. But if you're looking for a guy for the next 2 to 3 years to kind of come take over that program, definitely want to see a guy like Dante Moore. And, all those guys at Texas A&M jumping in the portal, I wouldn't mind if Miami, went over to Aggieland and grabbed one of those big defensive linemen like, Walter Nolan, LT Overton, or, a couple other guys that they have in the portal. So a lot of interesting names coming in the portal and a lot of interesting storylines are going to be developing over the next few weeks. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, C.J. Clark, the NC State defensive tackle, taking a visit to Miami this week. So make sure to check out what he has to say heading into that visit and his thoughts. So let's just keep it going with that. Signing day, kind of going to high school recruiting, Steven. I feel like just yesterday we were starting this cycle, starting to talk to these 2024 guys. And now, we're 2 weeks away from signing day. Just heading into that big, December 20th date. What are the storylines you're kind of keeping your eye closest to right now?
Yeah, I think the biggest one right now, and this is actually something that I wrote yesterday, is can Miami flip Armando Blunt back from Florida State? He went ahead and got that in-home visit from Miami. Mario Cristobal, Jason Taylor, they both hopped down from Coral Gables. Went ahead and gave him that in-home. His mom and his dad were both there. Seemed like the in-home went very well. And while he is still committed to Florida State, it sounds like the decision to flip to Florida State maybe wasn't as easy of a decision for Armando Blunt as some people make it out to be. It really does seem like Miami is going to continue fighting to the end. They actually told him that they don't plan on giving up for him, and they are going to fight like until pretty much the moment the pen hits paper for this 5-star defensive lineman who really is just right there in their backyard. I think Miami is absolutely going to keep pushing. I think that it wouldn't be an absolute stunner if he ended up signing with Miami. I think it would definitely be a surprise, absolutely, but I don't think it would be the most shocking and unbelievable thing in the world. Even though at the time, he does definitely still seem pretty committed to Florida State, and I do think FSU is definitely in the best shape there. That's going to be one. Then, of course, I mean, to restate the obvious, it's Jeremiah Smith. That absolutely, hands down, by a mile, is the biggest Miami recruiting storyline over these final 2 weeks. Can Miami somehow, some way pull Jeremiah Smith away from Ohio State? Is that a possibility at all? Because he has an official visit set up with Florida State. We don't know what his visit plan is going to be after that, but we do know that this recruitment is still open until the pen hits paper. We saw Brian Hartline out at the Chaminade Madonna game last weekend for the state semifinal game, and we saw him chatting it up a little bit with Jeremiah Smith's dad. And, I didn't really get the sense that, Brian Hartline was the least bit concerned at all. It didn't look like he was worried. It didn't look like they were, kind of pressing the panic button over there at Ohio State. I still think Ohio State feels like they're in a very good position for Jeremiah Smith, as they should, as they absolutely should. I think Florida State's going to have a really great chance to make a good impression on this official visit that he has coming up. And then we're going to have to see if Miami can somehow get him back down to campus one more time, because if they can, I think it would be really, really important that Miami is able to get kind of the last word in before he goes ahead and puts that pen to paper.
Yeah, no, a ton of interesting storylines in the high school recruiting ranks as well. And kind of one I would really say I'm paying attention to right now is the Jordan Lau situation. We look at St. Thomas Aquinas. Miami currently has 3 guys committed from that program: Chance Robinson, OJ Frederick, and Ryan Mack. And, when Jordan Lau first committed to Ohio State, I kind of spoke with him and he said, yeah, a lot of programs cooled off me. People just said congratulations and kind of let it be. But, we both saw his incredible senior year this year, and that's when kind of Miami started turning up the heat. And it looks like they might be a real contender to kind of stick their nose in late and, make some noise with that, recruitment and commitment to Ohio State. So that's definitely one I'll be having a very, very close eye out and really want to see how that ends up down the road. But kind of, Steven, the same question I asked you about the transfer portal. Who would be 1 or 2 guys? Obviously, Jeremiah Smith, everyone wants him in the class. But besides Jeremiah Smith, who are 1 or 2 guys you'd want to see Miami flip to this class to end out the cycle really, really strong?
Yeah, I'd really love to see them get another elite interior defensive lineman. I'd love to see them land an LJ McCray, a David Stone, and Armando Blunt, one of those guys, just because I do think Justin Scott is a really, really great player that Miami, quite frankly, had to have in this recruiting class. But I still think Miami needs one more whale on the interior. Last year, Miami was able to get 2 5-stars on the offensive line. This year, I want to see Miami get 2 5-stars on the defensive line. I want Justin Scott and David Stone. I want Justin Scott and LJ McCray. I want Justin Scott and Armando Blunt. And yeah, I do know that Armando did in fact reclassify from 24 to 25, but Armando is still a really, really talented dude and an absolute load on the interior, a really versatile guy who I think is going to be pretty college ready wherever he ultimately ends up at. But if I'm Miami, I'm placing a ton of focus on the interior defensive line the rest of the year, because Miami's interior D-line class right now is good. But I think they need one more interior D lineman, one more elite, like really high 4-star or 5-star interior D lineman to really make it great.
Yeah, we kind of see Miami starting to build that identity of, hey, we're going to be trench focused. We're going to play bully ball. We're going to push you guys around, and we're just going to, enforce our will on you. So definitely defensive lineman or should be at a premium for Miami, kind of that top target. But there's a guy in the 2024 class that Miami did recently take an in-home visit up in Charlotte, North Carolina, 2024 three-star defensive lineman, Danae White. I know, Steven, you want one of the big whales, but this kid is, big in stature, 6'4", 310 pounds, an athlete. He recently got an in-home visit from Mario Cristobal and Jason Taylor, and I spoke with his head coach, and he kind of told me, hey, it's coming down to the wire. There's a few schools that are really, really in the mix still, being Florida State and Miami, two programs he plans on taking official visits with the next 2 weeks, first being Florida State this upcoming weekend and Miami the next. A guy that the Hurricanes have really, really amped up efforts to recruit. So it's going to be an interesting name to watch down this final stretch. He hasn't been committed anywhere. He's been taking this process really, really slow, but he plans to sign on December 20th. So going to be a race to the finish line for Danae White, a big 2024 defensive lineman out of North Carolina. And Steven, I feel like this last week, all we've really been talking about is in-home visits. For you, just talking to these guys and, seeing recruitment unfold this cycle, just how important is that in-home visit with teams kind of fighting for guys down the stretch? You're trying to flip a guy, you're trying to keep a guy committed to your classes. How important do you think those in-home visits are?
Yeah, it tells us which guys really are the most solid to Miami. It tells you exactly who is actually shut down, and who maybe isn't. And keep in mind, some players may be receiving secret in-home visits. Some guys may be receiving in-home visits that they really don't want other programs to know about. But for a lot of guys, especially in Miami's class, I think Miami, really being able to go ahead and put themselves in the best position for Nye Carr. I think that was really big. Nye Carr's recruitment is shut down at this point, really reaffirming their position with Kevin Riley, who had Alabama after him. I think that's really big for Miami right now too. And then, of course, there's also, reaffirming with a bunch of other guys who we already knew were solid. You're talking about the Judd Andersons and the Dylan Days and the Nino Francavillas of the world. But kind of going forward these next 2 weeks, we're going to be keeping very, very close eyes on who goes to visit which programs, because, I got news for you. If you're allowing another program to come into your house and you're receiving that in-home visit, or you're going to visit another school either officially or unofficially, that means there is a good chance there absolutely is a possibility that you could ultimately end up signing with that school. Jeremiah Smith isn't just going down to Miami for no reason. He's not having in-home visits for no reason. Like, he's doing it because he's genuinely willing to entertain Miami, because he truly has some level of interest in the Canes. Armando Blunt, Florida State's the leader, but do you think Florida State wouldn't much rather Mario Cristobal and Jason Taylor not have come to his house on Wednesday? Absolutely not. You definitely want those two guys as far away from your five-star defensive lineman as possible if you're Florida State. So I think, these visits, they don't necessarily tell us, they don't only tell us what is happening in a recruitment, they also tell us what's not happening in a recruitment as well. I really do expect things to continue to be pretty hectic over these last 2 weeks. I think a lot is going to continue to happen. And remember, if a kid is willing to visit any program, if he's getting an in-home visit from any coach, then there's absolutely a possibility that kid could end up flipping.
Yeah, you kind of see down the stretch. I remember last cycle, a lot of guys, Samson Okunlola got that late in-home visit. Mark Fletcher got that late in-home visit. Can make a big impact on a way a kid views a program, getting that personal one-on-one time with the coach that, you never really had before. So a ton of in-home visits have happened this past 2 weeks, or a week, I should say, and a few more are going to be happening this upcoming week and heading into next. So we'll have you covered with all of those in-home visits and insights on what's happening at these recruits' homes. And to wrap up today's show, Steven, let me check my watch. In a couple of hours, 10 a.m., the first slate of Florida High School State Championship games are kicking off, with Chaminade Madonna looking for their third straight state title victory, powerhouse down here, and a ton of other guys up there in Tallahassee and across, South Florida, just teams up there. We've got Columbus, we've got Chaminade, we've got St. Thomas Aquinas, we've got Homestead, Miami, Norland. The list goes on and on. The high school season coming to an end. Steven, I just wanted to get your thoughts on, covering South Florida football for the first time, and just how important is it for Miami to try to keep these local guys home, keep them from going away to other programs and being those big-time guys, but instead, kind of put it on for your city and representing your hometown?
Well, I mean, man, this is the principle that Miami was really built on. This is what Howard Schnellenberger envisioned all of those years ago. And keep in mind, whenever Schnellenberger did it, he did it without all of these recruit ranking services. There was no such thing as a 4-star or a 5-star recruit. The number one player in the country. That might be a title that you get awarded by a magazine. But other than that, I mean, we had nowhere near the amount of recruiting coverage then as we did now. But it was Schnellenberger understanding that the best players in the country come from South Florida. A lot of the best players in the country come from South Florida. And if you only recruit South Florida and you win these recruiting battles in South Florida, more likely than not, you're probably going to end up having a team that can compete for a championship eventually at the end of the day. And then ultimately, Miami was able to, build upon that, and then they start branching out, and you're able to start getting recruits, from different parts of the country. And Miami gets the national build, and fast forward, what is it, 40 years down the line now, and all of a sudden here we are. I think that you're really going to see everything that the city of Miami has to offer on display in these state championships. Whether it's St. Thomas Aquinas or whether it's Chaminade Madonna, or heck, even if you want to go up the road a little bit and go to Mainland over in Daytona Beach, all of these schools have the requisite talent to build not only a good Division I roster, but a loaded Division I roster. Could you imagine putting up a fence and saying, all right, we're going to get Zay Mincy, JoJo Trader, Zaquan Patterson, Jordan Lyle, Chance Robinson. We're going to take all of these really blue chip elite guys. Oh, and LJ McCray. And we're going to put them all on the same team. Do you think there's one single program in America that would not love to have every single one of those guys in a signing class? You're wrong. Every single program in America would take that tomorrow. Ohio State would, Alabama would, Florida would, Miami would, USC would. Everyone in America would want that. And so, if you want a really good idea for which guys are going to be lighting up your college screens in the next couple of years, make sure you're watching those games.
Yeah, no, great weekend up in Tallahassee ahead. And like you mentioned, a ton of talent that Miami's trying to recruit. They're trying to build that state of Miami once again, like Schnellenberg did in the early 80s. So make sure to check out that story on all the top 2024 commits and targets up in Tallahassee. And that's all that we have for today's show. So for Stephen Wagner, I'm Izubee Charles. Thank you for watching.